everyone, welcome to this episode of Context is King. I'm Rebecca Brayton, and with me as always is WatchMojo founder and CEO Ashkan Karbasfrooshan to discuss the WeWork founder basically destroying his company and then walking away with $1.7 billion. Is it billion? It is billion. Nuts. Talk about it.
Wow.
What happened?
I mean, this has been covered quite a bit. The fundamental takeaway is, again, scarcity. Let me get to it. Softbank, Massa, son, built this company that had a lot of money and was able then to go out, named Softbank, based in Japan, and then was able to go out to the Saudis and say, give me more money so I could go out and invest in businesses. Usually funds have 100 million, a billion or two. SoftBank raised the Vision Fund, which had $100 billion.
Oh, is that all?
So that's a lot of capital to deploy, right? Like if you go out to startups and you give them a couple $1 million, you're never going to deploy that. And if you're going to go write checks for $1 billion or two, you're still going to have a hard time. So the entire strategy around the Vision Fund was we're going to go out and write big checks. So what happened was, reverse of scarcity, there was way too much capital in the hands of one person ultimately and one company, and thinking it's a whole new world, we're changing the world. They went out and they ultimately, the two, bellwether investments that they made was Uber and WeWork. Uber was a bad investment. WeWork was a disastrous investment. And then now, so that's on the side of the investor. On the other side of the equation, on the other side of the transaction, was Adam Neumann. So Adam Neumann, horrible set of values and principles, like that's setting that aside. Allegedly, maybe
business-wise?
No, as an individual,
okay.
If you read anything and speak to anybody, you can argue like, okay, fairly self-centered, somewhat hypocritical. No, extremely self-centered, extremely hypocritical and all that. Those are just my opinion and everybody else that has kind of worked, experienced that. Now, also allegedly fraud. Some of the transactions, and this all rose to the surface finally because they were privately held. And then when it came time for them to say, oh, we need more capital, they had to go public, so they had to kind of open the kimono, which is an expression which will probably not be used in the future because it is a bit sexist. You've never heard of open the kimono?
No.
Open the kimono is a term that you use like in investment banking.
Sounds
where
racist too.
It is actually very racist and sexist if you think about it, but it's kind of like you open up the books, you open up the numbers. Okay. Oh, it's extremely, somebody objected to it on Twitter and I
What
really
about
don't
just
use it very
open
much.
up the books?
People like expressions, people like analogies, but I agree, and I fully realize that's not going to be used in the future. And I won't use it anymore, starting now, I promise. So when they decided to reveal their financials because they wanted to go out and tap the public markets, what happened was public markets look at things very differently than private markets. So exacerbating the matter was basically Softbank that kept putting in money and kind of negotiating with the founder as to setting a valuation. So it's literally like if I give you my two $500,000 cats for your $1 million dog, is that dog really worth $1 million? No, we kind of just agreed, so it was kind of not exactly reflective of reality. So between the horrible lack of any kind of personal character and all that, you then had allegedly...
This guy sounds fun.
Well, that's it, right? And then you also had like allegedly some probably financial irregularities and possibly fraud. So setting that aside, SoftBank realized that they had a problem on their hand, and you can't ignore the backdrop and the macro mood and the marketing dynamics, and right now, the market had changed. Whereas before, it's like in boom times, there's always a greater fool theory. Somebody in bullish times will always come and pay $1 more for your asset, the greater fool theory. But in a bearish down market, that is replaced by the falling sword theory, which means there's not necessarily somebody there to catch a falling knife because it might cut you. Another analogy that the market's like. So what happened is even though there was irrational exuberance on the way up, on paper valuing WeWork at $47 billion, that made no sense. On the way down, the value in a few weeks went from 47 billion on paper to essentially zero. But so what happened now is Softbank, realizing it had a problem, had to get rid of Adam Neumann. But it also showed that Adam Neumann could care less. He would steal from a homeless person. He would steal from the blind, so to speak, just to line up his pockets, which is kind of like shocking. But again, people investing don't invest in people who are honest. They invest in people that they think can make them money. And generally speaking, you might think that a robber baron is going to make you money, right? So it all comes together, exacerbating and adding to the drama. People call this Khashoggi's revenge, since it's Saudi money that's being flushed down the toilet. Now, is this fair? No. So when you hear this, the part that's not fair is, this is the kicker, WeWork has, I don't even know, 10 to 15,000 employees. Half of them are going to lose their job.
Only half?
Only half. So they're going to have to let go like 5, 6, 7,000 people. While Adam Neumann, the former founder, who's now been asked to leave the building, is going to pocket all this money. So do you think that's fair?
Well, of course it's not fair.
How do you feel when you hear that?
I mean, honestly, he'll get his eventually. That's how I feel. I feel like karma will get him.
Well, the thing that kind of sucks for him and his family, and to be clear, we're not wishing anybody harm, is there is a mob mentality. And I do feel like it's like the paradox where he has all this money, he'll never be able to sleep at night. He'll never be able to walk. There's people that are going to go after him, unfortunately. Online, virtually, and tragically, like, people are going to be pissed, right? I mean, that's the only thing. And you wish people like cooler heads prevail, but you can't even enjoy that because, like, as a joke, I said on Twitter that the beneficiary of this is Amazon and Jeff Bezos, because he's not going to be able to use any of his money in a store. He'll have to just buy things online, hidden away. And what's the point of having all these nice homes if you can't even live there because you're afraid people are going to show up saying, hey, this is crazy. Now, obviously it's not fair, and obviously it's just crazy and unjust and all that. But I think it just goes to show, like, buyer beware. And also, like, as an employee, the investors here, SoftBank is an educated investor. It's not like grandma, grandpa invested money with WeWork and they got burned. That is at least one little bit of a saving, grace, so to speak, that in the end it was like this company that was boneheaded to make these investments and they'll get burned. But I do think, though, that the takeaway for individuals is don't get drunk on the Kool-Aid. There's always, we've talked about the myth of the entrepreneur, and I generally burst that saying, but I think a lot of people kind of were like, oh, this is Jesus Christ, this is Moses, I'm going to follow this person to the promised land. And then you realize, kind of like these fake prophets, that they're just lining up their money, they're flying around in Lear jets, whereas, telling you like, oh, God intended that I have this private jet, right? I mean, the guy spent $60 million on a jet when the company was losing money. I mean, that's just one example of. And it wasn't like this.
I smell a list there, actually.
Oh, there is a list. I mean, okay, but the issue was not also that this company was profitable. It was just like this company was just raising money. And anyway. So I don't think it's fair, but I think the sooner people kind of get, and I'm not one of those like, oh, life's not fair, too bad. No, life's not fair, but it's not too bad. It's more like, okay, because life's not fair, who do you want to associate yourself with? And then I hope that this will be a lesson for all, but it won't. Why? Because greed is temporary, greed is permanent, whereas fear is temporary. And in a year or two, there will be another Adam Neumann, there will be another Softbank. The characters change, but the story and the plot stays the same.
Yeah, I mean, it reminds me of the Elizabeth Holmes story a little bit.
It's like the parallel.
Yeah, except the people who were like her disciples were thinking they were doing something altruistic.
Well, here, I think it was just more like we're drunk. It's like pets.com, right? It's like, ooh, you have Hertz, but you're going to have Hertz.com and you're an internet.com company circa 99, so you should be worth more. I think with Theranos, and I mean, I don't really want to compare. I feel like I'm comparing Hitler to Stalin here in some ways, and I don't care if anybody's offended by that analogy, but you get the point. I mean, with Theranos, she was a charlatan, allegedly. I don't even know if that merits an allegedly. But at least her story was, we're going to save lives, and my uncle died, and was helpless, so I'm going to do this. So you could argue that at least the cause was good, and it was easier to fall for it. And there, fundamental difference, she was a crook, and her right-hand man was a crook, so to speak. Everybody else was sheep, allegedly. Everybody else was a sheep, so to speak, but altruistic. And the board believed her. The difference here is you could blame Adam Neumann, and you should, but Adam Neumann exploited a system that he felt didn't really have a victim in his mind. You know, he's a sociopath, he's a narcissist, whatever, you know, these people, however these people think, like Donald Trump thinks he's the victim, right? You know, he says, I'm being lynched, which I'm like, whoa, how could you say that, right? But in his mind, he feels he's being lynched. But the point I want to get to is here, as much as you could blame Adam Neumann for being a greedy cock, which is the nicest way to put it, his board deserves a lot of heat here because his board enabled this. The board authorized them to spend $60 million on a jet. Makes no sense. So here it's very different because both the board has to be blamed. But I think some of the employees, and I know a few who work there, so I don't want to be needlessly critical, but you run basically a real estate company. So to kind of be like, we're going to put all this lipstick and pretend we're some kind of something else, I feel is like, okay, you were basically, you rented space, you put in cool IKEA furniture and water with a pineapple in it. You're not a technology company. So there are parallels between Theranos and WeWork, but cautionary tales.
So what do you guys think? Is this fair? Is Ash going to keep using the kimono thing? Let us know in the comments, and we'll see you next time.